Hello everyone, welcome back to Scumbag System, or, well, that's the name of the anime. Technically, we're reading Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Let me know if the music's too loud or not. It has been quite a while. Actually, it's been since March, since we've read this. Oops. Y'all know me, I get distracted. Hello everyone, Pop Rocks, Natasha, Daniel, Lobsoul, Silent Leon, hello. We left off on chapter 46. That's the last chapter we read. Scumbag System is the story of a man who wakes up in the body of his favorite fictional universe. He wakes up in a fictional world of a book he just read in the body of the bad guy. And unfortunately, there's a system in his head, like a computer system, that controls what he's allowed to change about the story. So there's a lot of comedy and drama related to him trying to navigate the plot and keep from being too bad of a guy, you know, trying to stay alive. His love interest is his former pupil, Luo Binghe, who is also now the ascended villain in a way. He's the anti-hero. It's hard to call him the hero, but he's technically the hero of the book, even though he's now very angry and violent at this point. He is the main character's enemy, in a sense, because he's afraid of him. They have not been on good terms, but that will turn around, because they both love each other. They're both just stupid. Let me check this. Is this groceries? No, this is not groceries. I'm gonna plug my phone in so that it doesn't die. Except, where's the charger? Is the charger downstairs? Oh no, there it is. 1 second. I have a grocery delivery coming, and I have to remind myself I was asking for Pepsi. That's right. Guinea wanted to add Pepsi. Oh no, there it is. This is your shopper. Let me let her know. Okay. So, more specifically where we left off last time, our hero, Shen Qingqiu, was captured by Luo Binghe's servants. Luo Binghe has a lot of magic energy, I guess, demon energy. He's half human, half demon, and it's out of control. And so he has to capture people to use to purge the energy. Poor Shen Qingqiu unfortunately got caught up in all that and is now captured, but I don't think they've realized it's him yet. So he is trying to figure a way to get out and not be noticed by Luo Binghe, and that is where we left off with chapter 47, Gossipy Jianghu. Jianghu is, Jianghu is, the term for, like, I don't remember the literal translation, but it's like the world of martial arts. It's the kind of the setting. You think of it like the Knights of the Round Table and like the chivalric realm. It's kind of the same idea. It's like Camelot. The Jianghu is where the martial artists are all at. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 47, Gossipy Jianghu. At this time, the Shen Qingqiu, who'd already run miles away, was terrified out of his wits. His terror wasn't just because he'd made an explosive getaway from beneath Luo Binghe's eyes, but rather because in that split second he'd heard an extremely familiar and hateful voice. So he just broke out of the prison that he was in with Luo Binghe, and I think Binghe noticed it was him, just as he was running away for his life. Like, please, God, no! A mechanical voice with a tone like Google translates. Fuck. New hardware should be guaranteed to be virus-free. Where's my promised chance to turn over a new leaf, to henceforth be a bird soaring high and free? Covering his ears, like he could pretend the voice didn't exist this way, Shen Qingqiu dashed from the demon realm to the human realm as fast as lightning, tearing his entire way through the desolate wastes to the borderlands. And that demonic sound poured into his brain unceasingly, as if it was stationed within his psyche. Activating, binding to soul, debugging, contacting customer service. So because it was bound to his soul, the system reactivated upon encountering Luo Binghe. I switched bodies, so the connection is bad, therefore you need to contact customer service, huh? Luo Binghe was truly the bane of his existence. So what happened was, he's got a new body because of all the hijinks that happened in previous episodes, so he thought he'd escaped the system. Well, after meeting Luo Binghe, it reactivated. Did I put sugar in this? Oh no. Ooh. Fortunately, aside from repeating those few keywords in a half-dead manner, the system was utterly incapable of forming complete sentences. Shen Qingqiu smacked his head the entire way, but upon seeing signs of human life emerge, he considered his appearance, then slowed his steps and strolled back to the garrison town. This small border town seemed more alive during the day than during the night. It couldn't be called flourishing. The streets were neither wide nor narrow, and the pedestrians were neither many nor few, but with the storefronts open, it could still be considered to be thriving. Beside a tea shop with its flag fluttering in the wind, a young man and woman stood gazing into the distance, swords in hand. Shen Qingqiu walked over and asked, "Why haven't you returned to Sengchong Mountain?" Liu Mingyan gave him a shallow bow. Yang Yishuan hastily said, "The disciples from the other sects have already returned. Seeing that Senior has managed to escape, we too are now at ease." I think they were all captured with him and now they've escaped. Liu Mingyan, you may remember, was one of the female disciples, a former female love interest for Binghe in the original book. Yang Yishuan was an impetuous young fighter that I think wanted to train at the mountain, if I remember right. Minor side characters. Shen Qingqiu entered the tea shop with them, finding a table to sit down. To the side, some people who were originally chatting idly, upon glimpsing him, suddenly cried out in alarm. It's... Shen Qingqiu turned around to look. It was those border guard disciples he'd saved the first night he crawled out of the ground. The person who'd first seen him stammered, unable to call out a name. Lo Leo rushed to say, "It's you, Mr. Peerless." He'd mumbled another word after peerless, but its sound was very muddled, spoken indistinctly from beneath his tongue. The others mimicked him one after another with some degree of hastiness. "It's you, Senior Peerless." So remember that, when he first rose up and he saved people, they asked him his name. He gave his internet username, which was a raunchy joke, Peerless Cucumber, which... you know. So they're calling him by his stupid internet username. Shen Qingqiu nodded his greetings, internally deciding he must take another title, brooking no delay. Yang Yishuan said blankly, "Senior, is your name Huang? Huanghua? Guanghua?" I think this is a joke on names. Let's click this, yellow flower is splendor in that. Okay, so he's trying to understand what the name means, because cucumber is Huanghua. So he's trying to figure out the name. This joke's on names. Cat would like in the room, so I will get Cat. Come, Cat. Hello. Come in. Come on, come see us. Come say hi. You come here. I caught up, Bob. Hello, Bob. Can you say hi? You say hi? Man, I really should adjust where this camera is, because it always blocks him off. Alright. Let's see if I can... Wrong way. That's a little better. Shen Qingqiu coughed twice and mumbled indistinctively. After using this ID for so many years, for the first time he finally felt a little bit ashamed. He put on a stern expression and said, "Last night, disciples from various sects saw me in Qi Yun Cave. Though I can't conceal this fact anymore, if other people ask about me, say as little as possible. If you can keep your lips sealed on the topic, that would be best." Yang Yishuan said, "Why, Senior, aren't you familiar with my master?" "We are indeed quite familiar." While Shen Qingqiu was still unsure what to say, the table to the side continued their conversation. One person asked while spitting out melon seeds, "Liu Ge, why don't you elaborate? What exactly is the alternate explanation?" Lu Liu said, "The alternate explanation is really quite interesting. This theory apparently originated and spread from insiders. This Luo Binghe and Shen Qingqiu." Upon hearing the two names, Shen Qingqiu's heart gave a thump. He involuntarily straightened his posture, pricking up his ears to listen, and the motion of the fan in his hand slowed. The two from Sengchong Mountain sect also couldn't resist looking over. Lu Liu drank a mouthful of tea and said, "This Luo Binghe and Shen Qingqiu were master and disciple, right? This Luo Binghe came from a humble family and suffered the hardships of the world since he was young. After becoming a disciple of Sengchong Mountain sect, he still went unappreciated for a while, was beaten down and humiliated by his peers. Fortunately, Shen Qingqiu treated him with great warmth and kindness. He spoke with great flourish, his cadence rising and falling. With a gavel in hand, he looked no different from a professional storyteller. Shen Qingqiu inwardly nodded. Right. He too would say that before he kicked Luo Binghe down into the endless abyss, he'd been quite kind-hearted. Yang Yishuan snorted and said, "What use was that warmth and kindness? Didn't he still—" One person said, flabbergasted, "Isn't this theory completely contrary to the rumors of Shen Qingqiu abusing his disciples?" Lu Liu said, "This much has already astonished you? Then what are you going to do when I say that this master and disciple being together day and night, hidden feelings were born?" The three people at Shen Qingqiu's table had each taken a mouthful of tea. Upon hearing the sentence, Shen Qingqiu and Yang Yishuan simultaneously spat theirs out. Though Liu Mingyan didn't spit out her mouthful, her hand shook and her teacup tilted, spilling its contents all over the table. The whole table sucked in their breaths, one after another. "There's a theory like this?" Lu Liu said, "That's right. But strictly speaking, it was only Luo Binghe who harbored impure thoughts towards Shen Qingqiu, a one-sided delusion." A one-sided delusion? A one-sided delusion?! That's his inner thoughts. Is the Lakeview Hotel picture? Yes, that is what that is. I needed to make the back wall look a little more interesting, so I moved a shelf and stuff, but clearly I need to move the camera somewhere, because all the interesting things are blocked by the chat box. Oh, coffee without sugar is a lot. What sort of person was Shen Qingqiu? Qingjing Peak's Peak Lord. What was the way of Qingjing Peak? To be tranquil of heart and forsake desire, devoting all thoughts to the lawful path of cultivation. Shen Qingqiu rejected the mortal world and avoided being entangled with others. And so, because Luo Binghe sought after the unattainable, hate was born from love. Blue veins arose on Shen Qingqiu's forehead and the backs of his hands. Yang Yishuan said, astonished, hate born from love? Luo continued, thinking of it this way, it's very easy to explain everything else. The whole sequence of events at the Immortal Alliance Conference definitely went something like this. Luo Binghe entered the battlefield as Qingjing Peak's head disciple. Because of his remarkable performance, he was filled with confidence, and exactly then the demonic beasts ran loose. The mountain was sealed, and Shen Qingqiu entered Judi Gorge to provide backup. Seized by a momentary fit of madness, Luo Binghe took the chance to confess his true feelings to his shizun. Shen Qingqiu held his forehead in misery. Why did it seem like for any 10 lines this person said, 9 would be about right, but the last one would be so off? And it was exactly due to that sentence that the implications of the entire account were becoming so bizarre. Luo said solemnly, Shen Qingqiu was of noble and unsullied moral character, so naturally he gave a firm rejection. Shen Qingqiu was a little moved. Other than his bleeding heart of a Jiangmen Shishong, he'd never expected to find someone else willing to use the phrase noble and unsullied moral character on him. Who'd know that right after that, the storyline would take a nosedive? Full of emotion, Luo said, who could have predicted that after being rejected, Luo Binghe, in the grip of despair, would be overtaken by wicked thoughts, losing his mind and becoming abominable? Out of lust, he tried to force Shen Qingqiu to submit. Shen Qingqiu dug his fingers into his head of messy hair, burying his head in his hands. Yang Yishuan was already speechless. The gates of a whole new world had just been opened for this young man, assaulting him with new perspectives. Liu Mingyan, on the other hand, just let out a soft, "Ah," she said seriously. So that's how it was. So that's how it was? What? What was that referring to? Don't think I won't rip you a new one just because you're the female lead. Without his notice, a crowd of spectators had already congregated at Luo's table to listen to the gossip, with melon seeds and wooden benches littering the floor, attention rapt. At this time they all sighed. A beast. Not only a beast, but worse than one. But within these sighs was a tone of incomparable satisfaction. Daga, are you the captain of the Border Patrol Squad or the Gossip Squad? Luo abruptly slammed his teacup down like a gavel. Of course Shen Qingqiu wouldn't submit. Master and disciple crossed swords, and in the end the master still came out on top. So Luo Binghe retreated in defeat, leaving in sorrow. Through all pretenses had been shed, Shen Qingqiu still couldn't bear to ruin the reputation of his beloved disciple. He was unable to clearly explain and could only use the excuse that Luo Binghe had died at the hands of the demon race. With this he preserved the reputation of his disciple, unwilling to cut him off entirely. So this is the truth behind Luo Binghe's years-long disappearance after the Immortal Alliance Conference, and why he didn't return to Sengchong Mountain Sect despite being alive. It wasn't that he didn't want to see his shizun, it was that he didn't have the face to. While the story was in full swing on that end, Shen Qingqiu's heart was flooding with tears on this end. What an intense storyline. This bleep and this White Lotus Holy Mother, who are they? The key point was that the bleep actually hadn't been a successful bleeper. This was way too fucking off. How could this be Luo Binghe? If he wanted to bleep someone, anyone would obediently spread their legs, okay? Oh, Shen Qingqiu. Luo said, after his heartbreak at the Immortal Alliance Conference, Luo Binghe went on his own adventures. He trained until he was full of exceptional achievements and even gained the favor of Huanhua Palace's old palace master, but he was still unwilling to give up on Shen Qingqiu, and so staged a grand comeback. Thus came the events of Huayue City. Don't all of Sangchong Mountain Sect insist that Luo Binghe is a demon? I don't think it's necessarily groundless or wind from an empty cave. Most likely, they discovered slivers of evidence he was colluding with the demon race and slandering Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu was high above him, aloof and untouchable. Luo Binghe couldn't measure up in his eyes, so he wanted to drag Shen Qingqiu down, make him fall from grace and shatter his arrogance. Shen Qingqiu didn't know what he'd given up on, but either way, he suddenly felt his mind and body relax, and he no longer wanted to listen or care about anything anymore. He said pleasantly to the other two, "Let's order something." Luo seized the chance to say, "Mr. Peerless, you can count your table on my tab." Then, turning back around, he continued to sorrowfully lament. Luo Binghe thought of every method possible in order to shut Shen Qingqiu in Huanhua Palace's water prison. What do you think his goal was with this? His wicked ambitions were clear as day. Huanhua Palace had long been in his bag. He could summon clouds or rain with a flip of his hand. They claimed to be keeping Shen Qingqiu in temporary custody pending the four sects' joint trial, but it was no different from throwing a lamb into a tiger's den. For the couple of days Shen Qingqiu was shut in the water prison, he was bound with immortal binding cables and completely without spiritual energy. Who knew what that traitorous disciple did to him? In perfect harmony, the crowd cried out one after another in disgust. "A traitorous disciple indeed! Raising a tiger invites calamity!" Shen Qingqiu threw aside his menu. "How about we go somewhere else?" Oh, man. Hi, Katsuki. Thanks for joining us. What a great time to walk in. Luo said Shen Qingqiu couldn't take the humiliation and after struggling with all his might, managed to escape. But who knew he'd be cut off in Huayue City by the search party sent by Luo Binghe? From top to bottom, Sangchong Mountain Sect is of one heart, so Baijian Peak's Peak Lord, Liu Qingge, naturally went ahead to provide assistance. This attempted assistance was met head-on by Luo Binghe. Luo Binghe's jealousy overturned the heavens. He took on Liu Qingge in an earth-shattering battle at once, going all out for the kill. With no alternative, Shen Qingqiu could only self-destruct on the spot, and henceforth... He didn't continue talking, but left a meaningful silence, drawing a chorus of sighs from the crowd. Finally, Luo arrived at his conclusion. And so, this is the alternate explanation that's been widely circulated underground, even though it sounds incredibly absurd and some might treat it as complete nonsense. But there are many details that are worth considering. Gentlemen, bear this in mind. When true history is officially recorded, it's often whitewashed or embellished, the actual facts purposefully concealed, and many times the unofficial version is the truth. Those details aren't the slightest bit reliable, okay? The truth, your sister. Even if I had no girls to fondle for 20 years, no matter how wretched I became, I wouldn't fall to the point of getting gay with a guy, let alone with the male lead. Oh, Shen Qingqiu, if only you knew. The young waitress had finished gracefully weaving her way and serving the dishes, but Yang Yixuan and Luo Mingyan were still in a daze. Shen Qingqiu reprimanded, "Hurry up and eat. After you finish, you should hurry back." If they stayed any longer in this dangerous place, who knew what kinds of assaults these two children would suffer to their views on life, the world, and morality? After escorting the two juniors out of the borderlands, Shen Qingqiu picked a direction opposite to theirs. He'd been walking until the moon was high in the sky when his extremely keen hearing caught the indistinct peal of demonic bells. Shen Qingqiu said, without even turning his head, "You're truly like a ghost that won't move on." With her presence discovered, Sha Hualing didn't intend to keep hiding, and confidently strolled into view, red gauzy cloth at her wrists, and laughing. "Who taught you to make Ling Er so curious, sire? You took such attentive care of those two. What sort of relationship does your distinguished self have with Sangchong Mountain?" Shen Qingqiu turned around and said, wagging his finger, "I won't fight you, and you shouldn't try anything with me either." With Sha Hualing's current ability, she couldn't do anything to him. He was just thinking about scaring her a little when suddenly his entire body gave a jolt. It was like a millipede was crawling through his internal organs. A familiar and frightening sensation began to unfurl from the pit of his stomach. Sha Hualing's smile was sinister. I'm indeed no match for you, but did you think that means there's no way to control you? For a moment, Shen Qingqiu felt his legs go soft, but he managed to stand firmly. He clenched his teeth and said, "When did you have me eat it?" Xia Hualing said coquettishly, "How was the food and drink in town today? Was the waitress pretty? It's fortunate you ate it. If you were confident in your cultivation, avoiding food, and practicing in Edia, it would have really given Ling Er a headache." Fuck. Back then, his entire attention had been captured by the Gossip Squad's beautiful and heartfelt performance. Gossip kills, huh? So, if you don't remember, there's a thing where if you drink demon blood, heavenly demon blood, which means Luo Binghe's blood, he can exert power over you, and, like, that's what the tingly feeling means, so he can't run away anymore. He can be tracked, he can be controlled, and it was in the food when they were eating at the gossip table. She circled Shen Qingqiu and said, overflowing with glee, "Do you know what's currently in your body? This isn't any ordinary poison." "Shut up. I'm more familiar than you. I've already eaten heavenly demon blood. Twice! Twice! Normally you eat once and die once. Who's hit the jackpot as much as me?" Other than the blood's owner, no one would be capable of controlling heavenly demon blood. But currently the blood goo, I guess those are like, there's like worms or something in the blood, I don't know. We're starting to stir inside his body. That could only mean one thing. Luo Binghe is inside you. Xia Hualing suddenly bowed to someone behind Shen Qingqiu and said, "This subordinate did not fail your trust. I've already captured this person." Shen Qingqiu stiffly turned his head. Splitting the air was a rift that looked like dark lightning, now slowly sealing up. Behind him was a tall and slender silhouette, and as Shen Qingqiu turned his head, he met his gaze head-on. Luo Binghe was looking down on him from above. Though he had no expression, under the gaze of those eyes like twin cold pools, forget just another layer of whiskers, even a further disguise would have seemed to have vanished into nothing. Shen Qingqiu fixed his gaze on him. The Luo Binghe in the past, while indeed cold, was like the reflection of warm sunlight on fresh snow. Even in Jinlan City and the water prison, he more or less had some traces of humanity, some faint expressions, and would lose control and anger. But this young man's countenance looked as if it had been frozen for 1,000 years, right down to the snowy wastes and glaciers at his core, the sight chilling others to the bone. Poor baby. Despite this, Shen Qingqiu's current state of mind was quite different from what he'd expected. It was difficult to explain. All sorts of emotions were tangled up in his mind, but a single emotion which should have been there the most was missing. Fear. Maybe it was because he'd failed to avoid Luo Binghe despite all his exhaustive planning, freak accidents lining up to send him back to square one. But he calmed down instead and felt it didn't matter. For a split second, Luo Binghe's expression was puzzled, causing his face to appear to soften, just a little. But soon, this sliver of softness dissipated without a trace. His pupils contracted and a red mark flitted in a burst of light across the center of his forehead. His sleeves hadn't even fluttered when Xia Hualing was suddenly hoisted into the air, as if by an incorporeal hand squeezing her throat, and coughed painfully. Aw, bye Pop Rocks, thanks for joining us! At the same time, the drop of heavenly demon blood in Shen Qingqiu's internal organs frenzied split into thousands of threads, boring through his insides. Cold sweat soaked his back. Luo Binghe said breezily, "You certainly have some guts." Though his tone was light, anyone could feel the violent rage concealed beneath the surface. "You have some guts?" Was he saying this to him or Xia Hualing? Shen Qingqiu's brain shifted into high gear. Luo Binghe shouldn't have recognized him, even though the current face did resemble Shen Qingqiu's some. With Luo Binghe's ability to observe and notice details, even through a layer of whiskers, he could pick out the minute differences effortlessly. It looked like he'd taken him for someone with a similar face. though that did fuck all for him. Being recognized would indeed be a disaster, but not being recognized wasn't much better either. Dun dun dun! That is chapter 43. Quite a long one. Let's do one more. We won't do 3 today because that was super long, but we'll do one more. Chapter 48. Meeting Without Knowing. Xia Hualing didn't know why Luo Binghe was suddenly furious and struggled while frantically scanning everywhere through tear-blurred eyes, trying to find exactly what had caused her punishment. When her gaze swept over Shen Qingqiu's face, she suddenly slowed and showed an expression like she'd seen a ghost. Sorry, messaging the grocery lady. She said in a terrified voice, "My lord, forgive me. This subordinate knows her mistake, but this subordinate swears it was a complete coincidence. My lord, forgive me. I truly didn't do it this time." Inside, Xia Hualing was bitterly grousing nonstop, because she had a past record. Ever since she'd become part of Luo Binghe's troops, she'd seen Luo Binghe spending all day before Shen Qingqiu's corpse, and managed to vaguely guess some hushed-up things. Therefore, thinking herself clever, she'd found a person whose face had 5 parts similarity with Shen Qingqiu's, then asked a capable demon to do some polishing, make the fake look exactly like the original. It could have been called a work of otherworldly quality. Afterwards, she sent the counterfeit before Luo Binghe. The result was, not only did it fail to make Luo Binghe happy, it had sent him into a terrible rage instead. He'd nearly massacred and wiped out the entire Qiyun cave. Xia Hualing would never forget, nor did she want to see that expression of Luo Binghe's again. From then on, she was careful, not daring to graze anything even slightly related. Who'd have known that the vessel she'd settled on this time would also, coincidentally, share some similarities with that shitty Shen Qingqiu? This definitely violated a giant taboo of Luo Binghe's again. Luo Binghe said, "I seem to have warned you before not to try anything with this face." Strung up in midair, Xia Hualing's face was flushed red from asphyxiation. She made a series of choking noises and said painfully, "This time, this subordinate truly didn't do it on purpose." Well, she's having a bad day. Though Shen Qingqiu didn't know the ins and outs of the situation here, he'd pretty much guessed that it was related to this face of his. He shut his mouth, fretting inside. "I've already been dead for 5 years, but even now, just looking at someone with a similar appearance makes Luo Binghe this angry." No. Looked like he really left some severe scars on Luo Binghe's psyche. Suddenly a sharp pain assaulted Shen Qingqiu's abdomen like tens of thousands of steel needles were piercing through his organs. This time, no level of bountiful spiritual energy would be any use. His vision darkened and he coughed up a mouthful of blood, red with a hint of black. The air pressure around Luo Binghe was extremely low. From his expression, he was looking at something dead. At his waist, Shinmo trembled in excitement, humming without pause, as if about to exit its sheath. His hand pressed down on the hilt, and from the depths of his eyes surged a heaven-overflowing red. If you'll remember, Shinmo is the name of his evil demon sword, and part of the reason that he's, losing his damn mind and getting real nasty is because he is losing control. The sword is influencing him to the dark side. How do I turn off this alarm? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so. Shen Qingqiu wiped at the blood by his mouth, a little stupefied by the sight. Logically speaking, after entering the Demon Realm arc, Luo Binghe should have modulated himself into a relatively stable state, and sucking someone dry every month should only have consolidated himself further. Why did he have the feeling that Luo Binghe's state of internal balance had worsened? It was even more turbulent than when he'd self-destructed to suppress it. Xia Hualing was being hosted higher and higher. Seeing Shen Qingqiu cough up blood, she knew that Luo Binghe had the intent to kill, and was currently controlling the heavenly demon blood within his body. She frantically said, "My lord, you absolutely mustn't kill him. Tonight is the full moon. He'll definitely be useful. There's no one more suitable than him." She wasn't genuinely concerned whether Shen Qingqiu lived or died. It was just that if she let Luo Binghe kill this weirdo in his rage, even if his body's demonic qi didn't violently surge and cause him to go berserk, his next step wouldn't have anything good in store for her either. Having thought of this, Xia Hualing felt her life was full of misfortune, and became even more earnest, shouting herself hoarse. "Even if you don't care about him, don't care about me, think about that person." She threw it all out, suddenly raising her voice. "Think about the Holy Mausoleum!" Upon hearing the last two words, Luo Binghe's movements slowed. The Holy Mausoleum was the place where past generations of the demon race's ruling class were laid to eternal rest. Other than the current supreme ruler, the miscellaneous remainder were forbidden from entering with no exceptions, and violators would be killed. Within the Holy Mausoleum, the generations had accumulated various funerary goods in the form of magical talismans and spiritual devices, in enormous quantities and of rare qualities. Anyone would drool over them. Rumors said that within the Holy Mausoleum there was even a nature-defying mystical device capable of bringing back the dead to life. With Xia Hualing as an internal agent, the original Luo Binghe had successfully climbed to the top and infiltrated the Holy Mausoleum. Whose hands those things all fell into, everyone knew. For Xia Hualing to mention the Holy Mausoleum now, could it be to remind Luo Binghe he still needed her? Regardless, she'd obviously found the right direction. After hearing those two words, though a somber red still flickered in Luo Binghe's eyes, Xia Hualing's body suddenly plummeted some, and the tips of her feet could now touch the ground with difficulty. "You managed to remind me." Luo Binghe's fingertips slowly stroked Shin Mo, soothing the agitated and restless sword. He said in a low voice, "True, there's still the Holy Mausoleum." Xia Hualing was about to gasp in a breath when she heard Luo Binghe say, "Was that a threat?" Xia Hualing's soul practically fled her body at once. This subordinate wouldn't dare! Too tragic. No matter what, she was one of the two main female leads in Proud Immortal Demon Way, who for years had ranked in the top 3 of the female character popularity rankings. Why had she ended up in this state? Shen Qingqiu hadn't managed to finish lamenting when it seemed someone was pulling on his front, and his entire body was suddenly hauled upwards. His vision blurred, and in an instant his chest felt like it had chilled to the point of freezing. Looking down, Luo Binghe had one hand pressed against the left side of his chest. The sensation was like someone firing a cannon into his chest, the ammunition being pure black demonic qi. After entering his body, it spread like an explosion through his limbs and bones via his meridians. The system's sudden, clear, and shrill notification caused his head to throb. Touch verification successful. Connected to central power source. Storing power. Self-system evaluation. All operations normal. Thank you for your continued patronage. Isn't this touch verification a little too advanced? The spiritual body within Shen Qingqiu was originally a full reservoir. With this one brief link, more than half had been sucked dry. Hi, Liz. But this depleted state lasted only for an instant. From the sun, moon, dew mushroom-formed flesh body started a rapid influx of spiritual energy. That is such a fun sentence. His body is made from a magic mushroom, and it's very quickly revived with spiritual energy. The influx of spiritual energy was then absorbed even more rapidly by Luo Binghe. Shen Qingqiu felt like he was a mobile power bank and roared internally. Last life, he'd ranted a little too much in the book review section, but honestly, he'd only ranted about airplanes shooting towards the sky's writing quality, never the male lead, so why was Luo Binghe always picking on him? Luo Binghe made a sound of surprise, then withdrew his palm. This flesh body was different from the previous vessels. He'd extracted the majority of its spiritual energy and poured in an enormous amount of demonic qi, yet it could still rapidly and automatically replenish itself. Looked like Xia Hualing's single-minded insistence on capturing this person and going to great trouble to do so had its justifications. Xia Hualing fell to the ground in a seated position with a thump. She knew that her capture of this person was correct, and she'd survived a great calamity and escaped death. Still terrified, she ignored how her knees were trembling and hurriedly corrected her posture to kneel on one knee. Luo Binghe said, "I don't care if it was you or not. Remember to never let me see him using this face." Xia Hualing hastily bowed her head and said, "Understood." Luo Binghe casually sliced open a spatial rift and stepped inside, leaving as he pleased, with flippancy that was practically infuriating, just up and dumping the two of them in the wastes like he was completely unconcerned whether Shen Qingqiu went or stayed. But true, he had no need to be concerned. Since Shen Qingqiu had drunk his blood, no matter where he fled to, he couldn't truly flee. With a flick of his fingers, he could appear in front of a Shen Qingqiu who was mired in excruciating pain. Shen Qingqiu suddenly realized, so did this mean he'd become a lackey of Binghe's? What's wrong with her? Luo Binghe was holding her up and choking her, like, how dare you, blah, 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 and he let her go, and so now she's, like, gasping on the ground, like, oh my god, I almost died. Right. Since Luo Binghe hadn't recognized him, if he followed along and did his job properly, maybe his prospects would be pretty good. Like hell. Wasn't it just once a month? A couple of times, and he'd be used to it. Currently disoriented, he was caught off guard when Xia Hualing sent a clawed hand at his face. Shen Qingqiu blocked her with 2 fingers. "What are you doing?" Xia Hualing clenched her teeth and said, "Didn't you hear? He said just now he doesn't want to see your face." Shen Qingqiu stared at her, then suddenly reached out and tore a piece of gauzy cloth from her body. Xia Hualing shrieked, "What are you ripping my clothes for?" Shen Qingqiu punched 2 holes into the cloth and covered his face with it, leaving only his eyes exposed. "My clothes are too ragged, so I'm borrowing yours. Is clawing faces your only solution to everything? Isn't covering it with a cloth enough? Must you resort to disfigurement?" If not for Luo Binghe needing to use this person once a month from now on, meaning she must guarantee his absolute safety, Xia Hualing would have wanted to hack him to pieces. After thinking some more, even if Luo Binghe hated counterfeits, he probably wouldn't like seeing this face drenched with blood either. So Xia Hualing could only swallow her anger and yell, "Go!" Going was fine. In any case, wherever he went now would be the same. Might as well take things step by step and observe. By Shen Qingqiu's calculations, after Luo Binghe completely suppresses Shin Mo, he probably wouldn't need him anymore. Then it would be goodbye to the young Hu forever, and that time likely wasn't far off. As long as he was extremely careful so Luo Binghe wouldn't discover he'd pulled off a great escape using the mushroom, it'd be fine. Shen Qingqiu adjusted to his new role ridiculously quickly, stepping into the rift with Xia Hualing. She was the last to enter, and the opening slowly sealed up. The demon race's star employee's ability to adjust her mind state also wasn't bad. After several deep breaths, Xia Hualing had calmed down and asked, "What's your name?" The other side of the rift connected to a long corridor, the 2 walls decorated in hundreds of complicated designs. It was just that the lighting was too dim. Shen Qingqiu had the feeling this place looked somewhat familiar and said absent-mindedly, "Peerless Cucumber." Xia Hualing muttered, "Peerless Cucumber?" Then exploded in anger. "Are you mocking me?" The more Shen Qingqiu looked, the more he felt that if he'd never been here before, he must have at least heard the description somewhere, and in the process completely ignored Xia Hualing. Seeing no response, she angrily threatened, "No matter where you're from, now that you've drunk heavenly demon blood, you're henceforth one of the lords. If you try to rebel, dying without your corpse intact would be a kind fate." After turning a corner and passing several disciples wearing familiar light yellow robes, Shen Qingqiu was finally certain. This was Huanhua Palace, Luo Binghe's headquarters in the human realm. Gotta look at one more thing. I'd like to recommend Rise of the Undead Legion by Byakko. I will have to look that up. I have not heard that one. We have quite a few to finish, but we're gonna make progress, I think. We are more than halfway done with this. Let's see, where are we? This was far too different from the Huanhua Palace in his mind. Huanhua Palace was supposed to be splendid and majestic, dazzling with gold and jade. each plank and stone grand and lavish to the utmost. But the place before his eyes could only be described with one word: lifeless. Past generations of palace masters had all loved extravagance, and Luo Binghe was no exception, just that his love was for extravagant darkness. Even the 2 rows of oil lamps lining the corridor seemed on the verge of flickering out. In the blink of an eye, Xia Hualing had changed into the apparel of a Huanhua Palace disciple. When deliberately restraining her demonic qi, she looked the same as any normal, beautiful human girl. Luo Binghe passed through hall after hall like he was in a fugue, before sitting down in the main palace hall, geez. Originally, Shen Qingqiu had wanted to go for a stroll elsewhere, but Xia Hualing grabbed him. "What are you doing? Don't wander around. Follow me." Shen Qingqiu didn't want any clashes with her, so we could only line up together at the side of the main hall, back perfectly straight. Right afterward, some disciples entered to make their reports. Several paid their respects, to the throne, reverently why did I get the hiccups all of a sudden? Reverently relaying information. Originally, Shen Qingqiu listened without paying attention, but suddenly there was a name jabbing him like a needle. A disciple said, "Palace Master, during the time you were gone, that Luo Binghe came twice more. Unable to find you, he smashed Linghua domain." Listening to this, Shen Qingqiu's chest tightened, his gums aching slightly. Luo Binghe doing this? Surely he wasn't taking revenge for him, right? Remember, Luo Binghe is one of the other primary male characters. His life was threatened early on, and Shen Qingqiu saved him, even though they'd been enemies to that point. Well, lo and behold, Shen Qingqiu, the new Shen Qingqiu, being nice to him, earned him a friend for life. And so after his death, Luo Binghe, blaming Luo Binghe and other things going on, has been fighting him. We will see him again. On Luo Binghe's face was a lack of concern that said, "Whatever, my important self has plenty of money. Let him smash. Anything else?" That disciple glanced at him, wiped at his cold sweat, and said very carefully, "The other thing is, the little palace mistress wants to see you." Originally, Shen Qingqiu had thought that Luo Binghe would declare his love for his concubine and head for her abode with a doting expression. But who'd have known his face would remain cold and indifferent instead? As if even speaking was too much, he wearily waved his hand, implying rejection. The disciple said awkwardly, But I'm already here!" Just hearing the voice made Shen Qingqiu's teeth and body ache. Before he knew it, the little palace mistress had already charged inside stormily, wrapped in an aura like spitting flames. Following alongside was a comely, slightly older woman wearing a light yellow robe. Her eyes were hazy, as if on the verge of tears. It was Qin Wanyue. Shen Qingqiu shot them several glances, a little surprised. If you don't remember, these are 2 more characters who were originally in the first, the real book, part of his big ol' harem. One of them was the daughter of the guy that charged Shen Qingqiu with murder, the one with the whip that was always so bratty. The other was one of the women that was in the big, fight, the big challenge where the demons showed up and Luo Binghe got pushed in the abyss. Wanyue was one of the women that was there. They don't matter all that much, just more ladies that Luo Binghe has no interest in because he's a big ol' gay. At this time, these 2 maidens should have been blossoming flowers in their prime, but looking at them, there was unexpectedly quite a sense of haggardness, especially the little palace mistress. Those 2 splotches of uneven crimson on her face had likely been hurriedly applied with cosmetics. No matter how you looked, there wasn't even the slightest bit of a well-pampered mistress's radiant glee. The little palace mistress lifted her chin, looking straight at Luo Binghe. "You've returned." Luo Binghe didn't glance at her and didn't say anything. I totally effed up that sentence, jeez. Luo Binghe glanced at her and didn't say anything. Qin Wanyue said quietly, "Little palace mistress, let's go back." The little palace mistress said caustically, "Could I not know who you think of day and night? The reason you endure humiliation and remain by my side, exhaustively thinking and planning? Isn't it all so you can see him again? So when you finally see him, why do you start retreating, acting fragile and pitiful? Why didn't you stop me from coming beforehand and insist only on dissuading me now?" Head lowered, Qin Yue dared not speak. Her ears flushed. The little palace mistress clicked her tongue, directing it into the hall, and asked, "Have you found Daddy?" Remember, the original palace master of this place was her dad, and he's vanished. Luo Binghe said, "The old palace master has gone into secluded travel. No one has seen anything of him." The answer was really much too standard and insincere. In Shen Qingqiu's impression, and in various dramas and novels, accepted knowledge was that the person on the throne speaking this line was generally the culprit who'd caused no one to see anything of the previous leader. The little palace mistress gave a cold laugh. This line again. Is spending even the energy on thinking up a new line for me too much? All right, I won't talk about Daddy. I'll just talk about myself. She said shrilly, "If I don't come find you, you won't come see me either?" How could Luo Binghe be the kind of scoundrel who recklessly wasted resources, who tossed his women aside without sleeping with him? Them. Freudian slip. Don't insult his dignity as a top-quality stallion novel male lead. Too bad Luo Binghe clearly didn't want this kind of dignity. Several Huanhua Palace disciples appeared at the palace hall, seemingly to console her, but in actuality they were forcibly grabbing the little palace mistress and dragged her off instead. On the way, she screamed and yelled. Qin Yue also followed alongside, but sometimes she'd shoot tearful glances at Luo Binghe out of the corner of her eye, as if expecting something. Just then, Sha Hualing had been staring fixedly ahead, her posture perfectly straight. Now, she wrinkled her brow and followed them out, standing in the corridor and berating. "What have you lot been doing? You were asked to keep an eye on her, and this is how you do it?" Ho ho ho. So clearly we see the story has already changed. He has no interest in women. None of them. He will not have them. He has his heart set on someone else, who we will eventually see. We are going to stop there today. My voice is a little hoarse, and these chapters were kind of long, but thank you for listening. We will continue with another story soon. I'm going to try eventually to get back to doing 2 streams a day, like we did a while back, but it's summertime. My niece keeps popping by, so it may not happen until she's back in school, which will be next month. So for now, we'll just play it by ear. Next week I have family in town, so I'll stream when I can. Thank you all for your patience, and for being members and subscribers. If you like what I do and want to support it, links are in the description. You can buy books, support the channel, blah, 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 all that stuff. Thank you to folks like Daniel, who is a member and is here today. Thank you so much for your support. You guys are amazing, and I love all of you. Nothing else really to say for today. I'm going to try and do more kind of presentations this weekend, like back to religious stuff and what have you on Sunday. I know I missed last weekend, but again, my niece was in town. Yeah, so we will have more stuff sporadically as the summer continues. I promise I will try to continue to share stuff. I just don't know when it will be because of everything. Family dropping in and all. It's been fun though, so thank you once again, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.